Good morning, and welcome to the panel called What Changes Do We Need to Make as Leaders in order to embrace fast-changing environment that we face today? We have fantastic speakers who already did their presentation, except for one. And I would like you to introduce yourself and your company.
Good morning, Christina. Thanks for the intro. Well, in essence, I run the Sigma Foundation. I'm the Chief Philanthropic Officer. It's quite startup. Okay, I've been involved in charity for the best part of 2 decades, but the Sigma Foundation is quite fledgling, but we have various projects which are up and running, and some which are coming up in the pipeline. Probably the greatest calendar event we have is the Kilimanjaro Challenge, which has been happening for 17 years as we speak. Tough times as we speak, but we will manage the situation. We also have the Camino de Santiago coming up, and we have another trip up a different mountain. It's the highest in the Maghreb in North Africa, which is Mount Toubkal in Morocco. The Sigma Foundation, I wouldn't define it particularly by any adventure-orientated situation. It is, by and large, vying in that direction, but these are times of adaptability, as Nathan said previously, and we do need to be able to expand on our resources and choose different avenues to be able to survive and, in fact, as Nathan very well placed it, thrive. Well, that's me in a nutshell, Keith Marshall.
Thank you, Nathan. And you, would you introduce your company quickly?
Well, I'm involved in so many different things. I think sort of relevant today is the seats on boards that I have within 4 or 5 non-profit organizations that either work in the disability sector or children. And notably Inspire, Empower, the Linus Peteria Foundation, and Inspirasia, which was started by Mark, who we heard earlier. So my role there is ultimately to ensure that there is experience from the Maltese side with the international organizations, but also lending some of my experience from the corporate world in how we need to run these organizations effectively, efficiently, professionally. So that's translating a little bit of my sort of work experience into a passion. I have a very strong sense of justice, and I see things that aren't right, and I want to make some sort of difference to be able to put things right.
And I think that's exactly the opportunity with the COVID-19 happens, that things which were hidden, they have time to come out. And I would like you to share some strategies which actually worked for you over the last 12 months. Something which you would never consider, but this situation with COVID-19 prompted to take action on.
Good question. Probably the most, so the best answer to your question is providing therapy online. So we have, obviously, at Inspire, we've got many children who have difficulties, who have complex needs. And, my first profession is as a physiotherapist. So, you need to be hands-on. How are you going to translate that to be able to deliver something that's useful through a screen? And it was a challenge for the team, but they managed very successfully to be able to teach the parents certain skills that they could then translate through the hands-on approach on their children. Whether it was, helping them cope with children with autism who were stuck at home, isolated, which makes it very difficult for them to cope and deal with sort of helping the parents cope with that and teach them the skills they needed to be able to work with the children instead of the specialist teachers that Inspire normally provides. So I think that was a really interesting way of adapting to a very difficult situation that, whilst it didn't replace like with like, did help make a significant difference or continue at least to support the 1,000 or so families that depend on Inspire for therapy and education.
And it also showed that one can contribute to each other. You don't necessarily need directly to have a specialist to help your child, and that also bonds the family. And what about you, Keith? What was the...
Well, in essence, the way I've always looked upon philanthropy is that if you really wanted to see longevity and get meaningfulness long-term, big picture, it would have to be something associated with something that you actually enjoy engaging yourself within. I remember 20 years back when we started to kind of trudging along and getting to our ultimate aim of funding a particular project. It was all in the end result of the equation. And it was, by and large, we always managed, but it was boring. There was no shine to it, there was no color. And yes, we knew that ultimately we needed to achieve that aim. But how more interesting, how more adventurous, how much more fun is it when your build up to actually getting to that financial goal and mission, sorting it out, is actually something you enjoy waking up to. And by and large, this year, we've tried to address this platform day to day with our various groups for various training sectors. So we have people that we're training for a mountain, we have people we're training for a long walk in Spain, the Camino de Santiago, and in itself, the build-up to when eventually these gates open and we're allowed to actually engage in what we intend doing, the build-up has been something that I can see in people's eyes as has been really, I think it's been, well, I won't go as far as saying it's been a lifesaver, but many people have been struggling. And the fact that we can actually get these people to wake up in the morning, to have something to look forward to, in its own right, in its bare essence, to me has been very, very redeeming on a personal basis. From the point of view of prep work, of course, engaging in mountains and these challenges, it needs to run the gauntlet of time. You can't just wake up, swallow a pill, some kind of stamina building pill, and expect yourself to climb up 6,000 meters of mountain. It just won't happen. So the build-up process, the community effect within, I'm at the moment where I think by and large we're probably training about 70 people on different fronts. So the fact that we're giving that certain value to that particular aspect of the community already from my end is something which I believe has been shining light. In terms of vying away from our principal mission, we've been involved in various crowdfunding attempts, which, I mean, without sounding too many trumpets, have been very successful, I get the feeling. That's my impression. And we also have this really interesting campaign coming up, by way of which we're going to be relocating, if you will, the government vouchers, which are due to be out within the next couple of weeks, to various philanthropic associations and charities. It involves quite a bit of logistics, it's very taxing, and it's very time-consuming. But as long as the aim is justified, sure, we'll trudge along. It'll happen.
So it also shows that irrespective of the times, creativity and anything which comes from the heart always wins.
I mean, it's always something which is incentivizing. If you can grab a mission or an aim that you have and actually inject your level of rocket fuel into it, then by and large you will stumble and you'll come across problems, but belief will give you resilience. And that resilience can take you through. Now, there's grace, and they're doing it with aplomb and with a certain bravado, or there's, like we said, like plowing along. But as long, ultimately, as the end result is achieving what you started off to achieve, then it's fine.
So what difficulties do you face as a sector in this moment, which would not be facing if it was not COVID-19?
Well, I think the two major stumbling blocks that we've had to contend with, which have been the fact that in terms of fundraising events, these have had to be put on ice completely. One has to realize that we use these challenges to bring teams together and from there on create a platform or a springboard, if you will, to actually fundraise across an army of people. Now, in terms of, as we know, there's spatial segregation and the social distancing which have come in. There have also been legal impediments which have set in. I mean, the fact that you can't bring more than 10 people around the table is already a major drawback for us, let alone having a barbecue or a buffet for 400 people.
Yes.
It's just going to happen. It will happen one day, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, but of course we're speaking about the here and the now. Beyond that, even in terms of training, we're having to set up cells of 10 people per group even though we're fine, we're trekking Malta's shoreline and what have you. But the fact that you have 4 cells running concurrently, 10 people each being led by a contingent member, is really taxing in its own right. You've multiplied the logistics to it fourfold. But it's not something which is unassailable. And it's something which we take under our wing, if you will, with a certain gusto. Because we know that ultimately our goal will, if it's not going to be achieved today or tomorrow, somewhere down the line within close proximity will be achieved. So ultimately we fight for our goal through hell or high water. It's the way it has to be.
Yes, very interesting. And Nathan mentioned that you have to plan, and basically plan for always, not just for one fixed goal. So how do you do within your company? How do you plan for always? What does it look like?
Well, I think it's the role of leaders to listen. Yeah, not to do all the talking and all the direction. And if we listen to the people around us who are, if we've chosen well, competent and supportive, then we are going to make better decisions. And so the idea of making sure you have these open and transparent conversations within your work life is critical. And you need to make time for that. You know, often we have meetings which are crisis-based. You know, we've lost something or other that we need to replace, or we've looked at our finances and we're in trouble, or one key member of staff has left. And these are crisis situations you need to deal with. But we cannot underestimate the importance of having, call them planning meetings, but ultimately they are good conversations, deep conversations around purpose, around why we're in this, around what's our role, around our relevance. You know, are we still making a difference in the times, or are the constraints such that we are actually making less impact, and what are we going to do about it? And yeah, and I think it's really about making sure that we invite the right people to that table. They don't have to be hierarchical decisions. You can have someone who is a parent who has something to say that would add value to a conversation within a board environment. You know, it's not just having the CEO or the leadership team tell you as it is. It's really also hearing, you know, from the community about how we are making a difference to them and whether we're doing a good job or not, and adapting accordingly. So, you know, it's well and good to say, yeah, we've got the technology and we're going to do online therapy, but actually, is it useful? Is it working? Is it making an impact? Are the people getting a benefit? Sometimes we do things because they're great ideas, but we don't perhaps get enough feedback from the people we're trying to help to actually see their point of view. And so for me, you know, it's not about setting strategy meetings. It's really about having those open conversations where you can take feedback, you know, even if it's criticism.
I also noticed that both industries are very much human-focused, real-life interaction. And now we are moving very much to a digital and internet space. So how does that transition affect you and the people you are working with?
It affects people in different ways because of personality. So your introverts perhaps are happy to be you know, behind the screen sometimes, and your extroverts are feeling frustrated. But joking apart, I think this has changed the dynamic of the way we interact, so human relations. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's a negative. A lot of people say, you know, we've lost the human touch or the human interaction. That happened with Facebook 10 years ago, you know. We've relied on communicating online, you know, by messaging for many years. So in that sense, I don't think that the pandemic has really been the cause of our lack of human contact and social contact. That's been eroding for some time. What I do see on the positive side is that we are a bit more focused. There's more of a collective mindset that we're in this together. And this feeds collaboration. I've seen, you know, CEOs even in the business sector who typically would not collaborate because they'd be competitors actually coming together and doing things together. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a benefit to the fact that we have this common enemy, that is this pandemic, that's potentially bringing people together. And I think, you know, from the non-profit sector, the third sector, I think that is also true. What it does, however, is that it limits our ability to engage. You know, as Keith is saying, when you have an event and you have people there at your event, you have the opportunity to stand up and talk about your organization and inspire them and get them to feel part of it. And obviously, without the events, that's having an impact. So we need to reinvent the way we do this. Webinars are not as effective, with all due respect to today, as having a conference with people where over coffee you can sort of delve into a sideline conversation. And this is affecting the way that we market ourselves, or we get our message across. So I'm curious to see how this is going to continue to evolve. But I actually think that we've benefited in a very strange way from this pandemic, because it's actually improved our work-life balance. It's improved our self-awareness. It's reduced our continuous chasing our tail to do more and get more and buy more and spend more. So therefore, I think there is a positive effect, a positive outcome on society from this situation, as strange as that sounds.
Yes, every what we call as problem has a hidden opportunity. Keith, what would you suggest to sector leaders? What they should focus first about in this situation, dealing with the...
Well, I think this is very much, it's very much a personal situation. And each particular charity, NGO, VO, I think each one plays out on various facets in different directions. Us personally, from the adventure meets philanthropy point of view, by and large, I agreed with a lot of what Nathan has said. And I really don't want to sound like the harvester of doom and gloom. But when we base much on interaction and creating a platform by way of which we can actually bring together people together under one roof, within the bounds, under the auspice of fundraising, it has stemmed our flow. From the training point of view, the fraternity, building up kindred spirit, actually motivating people towards the ultimate aim of achieving the fundraising that we need to get through, and eventually matching their challenge, whether it's a mountain, whether it's the Camino de Santiago, that's been fine. Actually, it's probably been promoted in terms of there isn't much else happening. Mm-hmm. So when you can actually pitch with a proposal for a Sunday morning trek, by and large, by default, we've become really popular. In fact, at this point, we're pushing away people more than reeling them in. That's been a shining light. But in terms of actual functionality, why we're doing it, and what ultimately our end aim is, the fundraising prowess point of view, along the lines of adventure meeting philanthropy. Once again, I'll stress on that. I mean, beyond that, we've crowdfunded, we have this Sharing is Caring campaign coming up, but that's not really what we're about. Although we've gone on various fronts, I would have ourselves believe we're kind of semi-pseudo-defined by philanthropy. Doesn't need to be boring. We can go out there, actually color something over, give it its shine, and at the same time, as a spin-off or beyond, however you choose to define it, we can get some magic done. And that at the moment has been a bit tampered.
And that is a fantastic point, because I also would look at society.
I mean, Chris, you've been trekking regularly, as have Martin. I actually extended an invitation to Nathan to join us a few times. It's a social thing.
Yes.
Social meets stamina, meets training, eye-to-foot coordination. You're actually getting down to doing something where there isn't really much sacrifice to it. And if you want to look at the longevity factor behind philanthropy, I think you probably get the most mileage out of a situation where you're actually yearning for something, you're actually looking forward to waking up at stupid o'clock and getting your kit on, and it's regardless of how long it's going to take and how much sweat you're going to lose. It's fun. Ultimately, we need to break away and banish this thing that philanthropy is pigeonholed in one direction. I mean, many roads lead to Rome, and ours is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Nathan, I wanted to ask, how being a record breaker and a sportsman helped you to focus? And do you think that being very active, dynamic, it would help you in these situations like our days?
Oh, absolutely. On a personal level, I think, being physically healthy helps being mentally healthy. And having a purpose of, as Keith is saying, getting up on those dark, cold, wet mornings to do your run because you need to get your miles in, builds discipline. And that discipline then translates into work discipline. It translates into the commitment you need to put the hours in to be able to get the job done, or to study after work to be able to get the qualifications you need to be able to take your level up. And so for me, whether it's sports, whether it's the arts, whether it's other aspects of hobbies that are taken seriously, that become passions, you are upskilling yourself to be able to deal with then difficult times like we're facing today. And so the commitment and discipline required to carry out something well, doesn't have to be sports, it could be playing a music instrument, will build your own mental strength to be able to then deal with the parallels of the environment that we're in. So, the CEOs I coach, for me, they're probably sick of me saying the fact that they need to get into a routine of exercise because that actually helps them run their business better.
I agree. Keith, would you start, if it's not COVID and you do what you do, would you still start the same business you're in? Or would it be something different?
I'll take you back 20 years. I had been involved with charity well before Ethiopia. When Ethiopia came along, it kind of defined my future because I knew it could no longer be a flash in the pan situation. So I knew that we needed a long-term strategy. Our short-term strategy in terms of fundraising and what have, it was really boring. It was fastidious and it was just unadulteratedly sacrificial. I knew we needed to get past that finishing line. But it's like I've heard Nathan speaking about this many, many times. It's how do you define your finishing line? Do you just scrape across and you just kind of fall over the line, or do you take it with grace and panache? Once Kilimanjaro came to be, and we realized that we could create a support system and a platform to go forward, I knew that we had landed on a gold nugget. I also knew that we could hone the situation and perfect it through the sands of time to make it really nice and interesting. It's never perfect, but to answer your question, we're getting to a state where I can say I'm really happy to be able to use this modus operandi from here and from here on. We have honed across the years and we have made mistakes. It's not within the mistake, it's not learning from your mistake and kind of helping to, assisting to perpetuate it. But by and large, this 17 years of Kilimanjaro has been an adventure, and if I could go back and change anything, there's hardly anything I would change, to be honest with you. By and large, it's been a cash cow and it's been a holy grail, and it's kind of defined us as well.
So what you're saying, it's actually not the bad times, but really knowing what you want and doing it with a passion. Is it true?
I wouldn't say that the times are not bad, because as we've spoken, we've delved into the subject for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. I mean, when it comes to fundraising, and ultimately it is one of the avenues that we obviously hold the highest of regard, and we need to cherish, and we need to actually get to the end of our goal. It has been severely tampered with. But we do know ultimately that it's a transient state. I mean, if we didn't have the situation and the light at the end of the tunnel as we speak, then I would venture to say it would be desperate times. Not in terms of my personal value to it, in terms of legislation and how measures have come in to impede us from going forward as I would personally have us go forward. That's the situation we're staring at as we speak.
Yes, this has to change, and it's great to shed some light on it. Nathan, what 3 key advices would you give to third sector leaders that they could use from what we already discussed today?
I think perhaps, reflecting back on what I hopefully shared earlier that was useful, it's it's being a decision maker. Leadership is lonely, and we often tend to hide behind consensus, and we try and want to make sure that everybody's happy, or perhaps everybody agrees with us, or the way we'd like to take things. But sometimes we need to go against the grain. We need to break things in order to get breakthroughs. So being decisive, or making decisions, or carrying that responsibility is the first part of being a leader. It's accepting the responsibility that you can't keep everybody happy, and you're going to have to make some tough choices. So be brave around that. I think the second one is, on the other hand, have an open mind and an open heart. Listen to people, listen to other people's opinion and advice, and build your own thoughts through the collaboration of others. And I think the third one is stay on purpose. Just keep reminding yourself, the examples of climbing a mountain, or being in tough times where everything is going against you and the weather's rotten and you're tired and you're exhausted and you're hungry. You question yourself. You say, why the hell am I doing this? And at that time, you need to remember why you're doing it. And that is the purpose. That's the reason why you've chosen to accept the responsibility of being a leader. And that is important. So, Simon Sinek will say, start with why. I put it third, but essentially, those three components are equally important.
3 great advices. Keith, what about you? What would be your?
Well, by and large, I would have to agree 100% with what Nathan said. I mean, I think that was actually impeccable. Can we go on to the next one?
Cut and paste.
If I had to be really honest and unadulterated about it, perfect.
I've copied them off someone else anyway.
Martin, any questions you would like to ask?
No, it's been really interesting listening to this, and it's really achieving what we wanted to achieve from having this ICE factor, is to bring good minds together and look at the reality of the situation. And I think, as Nathan said, there's been a lot of positives that have come out of the last 12, 15 months. And I think the biggest one, you touched on it earlier on, has been the way in which people have had to stop. They've been forced to stop in a way that they've never been forced to stop before. And that's given people an opportunity to look at what their situation is and to look at what they really want from life. And more importantly, to give them the time to actually study it and research it and find out more about why they've been doing the things that they've been doing. So I think those, for me, the positivities that have come out have been the questions that people have been asking themselves. And what's exciting is to see that at a corporate level how decision makers in companies are being influenced by their customers who want authentic relationships. They want real. They don't want the greenwash. They don't want the whitewash. They want real, tangible results. And so probably it's something that's been evolving over recent years, where customers have been looking under the hood of companies and saying, are you for real? Do you really believe those things that you're saying? Do you really believe that? Or are you just sponsoring this so that you can tick that box? Or are you just planting a few trees because then you can offset some carbon? But what do you really believe? And that's been an interesting process to actually see people coming out the other end of that and changing their lives. Deciding. I know clients and I know people who have been in big corporate gigs who've actually just stopped being in a big corporate gig and actually just gone off to do what they've been wanting to do for years. And it's been inside them. It's been burning inside them, and now they've had the opportunity to do that. So. My mum used to say, it's an ill wind that blows no good, and I think that's one of the things. But alongside that, there's also major concerns, in particular with mental health, in particular with situations where people's income has been devastated, where their future has been rocked, and for a lot of people, if they're living from month to month, and that situation gets interrupted, then that's a serious That's a serious issue. And I think that's where the third sector really now is coming into its own. And ironically, at the precise time when we really need the third sector, it's when the third sector is most under threat. And I think that's why we need things like today, where we can actually look at what is the way forward. There is no right answer. There's no one magic bullet. There's no one pot of gold. But I think just as people have been evaluating themselves personally about what they want to do, I think this whole sector is ripe for complete change. I think the way that it's evolved has been it's just kind of bumbled along, and there's been a lot of copy-paste, and it's, starting foundations and starting charities, and there's too many charities in a way, and that might not go down well with people who are watching this, but I think it's time to consolidate. It's time to look at what we're really doing, and I'll give you an example. I had a professional footballer client a few years ago who came to me and said he wanted to start his own foundation, and I said, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, the game's been good to me, I've made a lot of money, I want to give back. And I said, but what exactly do you want to do? And when he explained to me what he wanted to do, I said, there's already really good charities doing that. So why do you want to create another foundation? And basically it was because he wanted his name over the door. And in the end, he made the decision to actually put his money into another organisation that was already up and running and was already doing what he wanted to do. And I think that level of honesty is something I think we're seeing more of as well. Because when you slow everything down, the places to hide are usually, corporately, the places to hide are usually in the speed of movement of things. Things are moving so fast that it's easy to fudge and hide. But when things all get slowed down, there is nowhere to hide. So then you've got to be real. So that's my takeaway on the last 12 months.
That's a great answer, and it is, yes, true, because if you see very quickly a fan spinning, you really don't see spikes. And only when it gets and makes slow turns, you start seeing things. So every situation reveals what is hidden and what is not working only when things shift and things slow down. So it's a good situation in a way, as much as it sounds like bad, but it's still good globally, because we really start seeing what is not working. And as you mentioned, we can be very genuine, not anymore about just it's because popular, it's because it looks good, but do I really want to do that thing, and does it really help? So the situation helps. What would be your 2 coins, last coins, to wish people who are stressed, who are lost, who don't know even how to collaborate, where to start and how to go, in a brief?
I think first is accepting that it's okay to be stressed, to be lost, to not know where the hell you're going to bang your head, either for yourself, but also for the people that are following you if you are running an organization. It's fine. There are other people in that situation. It's not the end of the world. And acceptance for me is allows you to draw a line in the sand and then start to become proactive and move forwards. So, I'm cautious with the "it is what it is" situation, or to say, look, this is what we're facing. Let's accept the situation and let's start to move on. Just beating yourself up because you're not managing, or you don't know where to turn to or who to turn to, is something you have to unlock yourself from. Yeah, and that means that you need to be able to step over that line of moving forwards. For me, the biggest motivator to do something like that is finding a purpose, a little bit like I said earlier. How can you really make inroads into change based on a desperate situation? How can you make things a little bit better? And that starts to build the momentum. So if you've got, an organization that's been decimated funding-wise or human resource-wise, you're still there if you're still alone. What can you do that's helpful, that's useful? How can you start to rally people around you that believe in you and that are perhaps in the same situation as you are, and find inspiration from each other? So, yeah, accept the situation. You're not alone. It's fine. Seek help, but push forward.
That's very nice and encouraging. Keith? What would you?
I think a cornerstone in the whole affair at this point, as we speak, would probably be patience and trying to allay frustration from an angle. Tough times, we've been discussing this for the last half an hour or so, and very frustrating. It can get really frustrating, especially when you're at the blocks and you're dying to get that whistle. Boom, let's go, let's move, let's do stuff, let's make some magic. But patience, at least, will maybe prevent you from getting precipitous and taking decisions and maybe going out there and acting on a whim and with your senses haven't been fogged up. I think that can lead to even larger problems. So, by and large, you need to sit tight where the situation warrants it, be patient, allay frustration, and prepare yourself. And there's, at least in our case, there's loads of prep work in terms of training, in terms of actually setting up different modules and what have you. Prepare for better days. That will be my 2 cents on the affair.
Thank you. Martin, what about you?
I think that now's a good time to be thinking about other people and to be looking around at the community and see who needs help. It's also a good time to be looking inside yourself and saying, what can I do? What skills have I got? What can I do better than other people can do, and how can I use those skills? How can I donate those skills to the community to actually help people to come back from this situation? And I think those things are things that people are thinking about. And as Keith said, with the community that Keith has built around the treks and the trails, there are people there who've met each other and had conversations that they would never have otherwise had. And that sense of community, and when you discover someone in that group that actually is in need of help and didn't know how to ask for it, but it just comes out in conversation, that's a magic moment. And really, humans are in need of contact, and they're in need of communication, and they're in need of touch and caring and all of those things. And I think as society supposedly got created more time through the use of technology, actually it didn't create more time, because humans didn't interact more with each other, they interacted less. Because it was too easy to press a button, like Nathan was saying earlier on Facebook, and like something, than actually just walk around the corner and talk to someone. So I think now there's a yearning to actually get back to that, and hopefully what we'll do is we'll come back with everybody having the outlook that they should always have had on it. At the risk of sounding like I've been around for a long time, when I was a kid, it was really about your neighbours. It was looking out for your neighbour. We knew all the neighbours. We knew their names. We if they were sick, we looked after them. And I think that's coming back. So I think that's my takeaway.
Thank you very much, Martin. And we need to close our conversations. And everybody who was watching, I'm sure you see that this is happening real time. These are real leaders living real lives, solving real solutions. So you don't have to look far away and see, as Nathan and Keith and Martin said, that you are not alone, you are in community. And as we speak, we solve, we innovate. The same you can do at the moment right now. Thank you.